The story I'm going to tell you today has been on the internet for a very long time. It has been retold many times in one way or another, and no one will tell you exactly when these events took place, but that doesn't make it any less interesting or, more importantly, instructive. I think everyone needs to hear it. A man named Chris, about 40 years ago, was still a very young traveler. By coincidence, the guy was in Alaska. He had always been attracted by this mysterious land, endless snow, silence, and of course, untouched nature. But his main goal was still the gold. He and a group of enthusiasts set out in search of the precious metal. Often the group was moving in groups of several. It is dangerous to be alone in the wilderness. But on this day, it turned out that Chris went on his own. The rest of the group stayed in the small wooden hut that was their camp. Many were cold and just wanted to rest. Chris understood the seriousness of the decision, so he expected to make a short hike. He had no idea at the time that instead of precious things, he would have to come face to face with a predator. Chris made his way through the snow. He had already moved 2 kilometers away from the camp and was moving slowly toward the riverbed when suddenly a large dog caught his eye. Of course he was surprised. What could a lone dog be doing in this wilderness? Although there might be some people out there, it was obvious that the animal was behaving aggressively, growling and rushing around in circles. Because of his youth and inexperience, the boy decided to go down the hill and see what was going on there. But 20 meters away, looking closely at the animal, he simply froze on the spot. At first glance, the big gray dog turned out to be a real, huge, wild wolf. The animal bared its fangs and growled menacingly when it saw the man. There was no point in running away. This would make him easy target for the predator. But something confused our brave man, and looking closer, he realized the huge wolf came into a trap left by poachers. In addition, he noticed her swollen nipples. The she-wolf seemed to be a nursing mother. The man realized the predator needed help, but did not plan to let the human get close to her. And he had no intention of going right into the wolf's clutches. The boy's mouth went dry. He felt himself break out in a sweat. Just imagine yourself in his shoes. He's out in the middle of nowhere, alone with a ruthless predator, and no one can help him. But what to do? Leave the poor wolf to die? Perhaps someone would, but a thought occurred to the man. There might be a den with puppies nearby, and the little ones might be alive. All that was left was to find them and bring them to their mother. The guy began to look for wolf paw prints leading to the lair. In this case, the rescuer was lucky. The paw prints were found, as there was surprisingly no snow falling that day. The paw prints led pretty far. In his head, the boy was struggling with himself. What am I doing? Fear overcame him, and he got farther and farther away from the camp and moved along the paw prints. The boy had to walk several kilometers through the snow before he could locate the lair with the little ones. But approaching closer, fearful, like most cubs, wolves smelled an uninvited guest and hid in a hole at the sight of a large and scary, for them, man. There was no time to hesitate. That's when Chris decided to trick the cubs. He had some food. He put it near the entrance to the hole, and it worked. The clumsy little creatures crawled out of the den and approached the man, swaying on their short legs. The predator instinct kicked in, and the man held out his hand, stunned, as the little ones gripped his fingers and began to suckle. Apparently, the babies had been hungry for a long time. The man realized, most likely, their mother had been trapped for more than a day. He took out a bag for gold and put the wolves there. The way back took about an hour. All the time, the cubs whimpered and floundered in the bag, even trying to growl. They were so small and already had such a temper. Before he reached the wolf, he heard a loud moaning and howling. Most likely, the mother smelled her cubs. The boy untied the bag with the cubs, and 4 pups, whimpering loudly, rushed to the mother. And then they dug into her belly, and there was a concentrated chuckling. The she-wolf licked her babies and warily watched the traveler's actions. The boy tried several times to help the wolf to get out, but the predator immediately began growling as soon as she saw the approach of a human. Our hero had a little piece of meat to spare. He tossed a few pieces to the wolf, but to his surprise, she refused to eat it, suspecting a trick on the part of man. So Chris sat there, watching the family until late evening. When it became quite dark, the man returned to his camp. He said nothing to anyone. The next day, in the morning, everyone had gone to work. The man decided to take more food and went again to the wolf. When he came to that place, he saw the mother warming her babies. But there was no more food. Hunger prevailed. This went on for several days. Every morning, the young man went to the animal and fed the predator, but she still roared every day. On the third day, the pups began to trust the man. They happily jumped around him and licked his hands. When the man stroked the cubs, the mother wolf watched intently, and as soon as his hands touched the cubs, she immediately called the cubs to herself. She did not trust the stranger. For a whole week, Chris did not give up. He visited the wolf with the wolf cubs every day. The boy had almost given up all hope of freeing the captive, but what else could he do? Leave them all to die? On the seventh day, in the morning, our hero habitually sliced the meat to the wolf. The animal watched the man's actions intently, and at one point, the guy looked up and noticed the captive barely wagging her tail. It was a victory. Chris, carefully, barely breathing, approached the animal, opened the hateful trap, and freed the furry captive. Then she ran away a few meters and called the pups after her. Together, they all disappeared into the thick of the forest. Since then, the boy never saw her again. A week later, the man returned home to Jersey. He had already forgotten about the story, only occasionally telling his closest friends, but of course no one believed him. 5 years had passed since those events. Our hero took a job at a fishing company and once again found himself in Alaska, not too far from where the events occurred. One day, the man needed to deliver a letter to a neighboring settlement. He left early in the morning on his snowmobile, but halfway down the road, his machine broke down. No matter how he tried to start it up, it would not start. It was freezing outside. Several hours of attempts to start the snowmobile were unsuccessful. It was only a short drive to the settlement, but it was starting to get dark outside. Chris decided to abandon the equipment and walk. After walking a few kilometers on his way, he saw a dark silhouette. All the locals know that to be alone far away from the settlement, and even more so at night, is equal to suicide. Danger lurks at every corner, and there's no escaping from a pack of wolves. Chris panicked. How could it be? He understood and felt that he was under the gaze of a pack of predators. He could see how skillfully they surrounded him, driving their victim into a ring. The circle began to slowly narrow. At least he counted 5 huge wolves. It was time to say goodbye to his life. His heavy breathing, the pounding of his heart, was so strong that he couldn't even stand on his feet and fell to his knees. And just when he was already realizing that it was all over, he heard a loud growl. From behind the trees, one of the predators was slowly approaching him. It approached the man at a distance of several meters, but was in no hurry to attack. The man looked into its eyes in fear and horror and instinctively recognized it. Standing in front of him was the same she-wolf that he had saved years ago, aged with a shabby coat, but it was definitely her. The she-wolf tensed, gazing intently at the man. The eyes met for no more than a minute, and then she wagged her tail a few times and turned and ran into the woods. The rest of the pack, after the she-wolf left the place, followed her. This time, the rescued captive disappeared into the snow forever, and the traveler quietly reached the settlement. It so happened that once having saved the life of the wolf and her cubs, many years later, the wild predators reciprocated the same coin to the man. Friends, that's all for today. Write your comments. Did you like the story? Rate the video and see you soon.